First up, we have got the Raptor, and the reason why I decided to put this creature on the list is back in the day when I played Ark on the Switch. I haven't played the new one, by the way. I've only actually played the original one before they updated it, so all the creatures on this list are from the island. But when I played it back in the day, as it wasn't maybe my first Ark experience, I played it on PC before that, but then I kind of moved to Switch as I got a Switch, and then after that moved back to PC and then dabbled a bit with Xbox, but I'm now pretty much in the PC space. But when I was playing Ark on Switch, I really liked the Raptor. I liked how small it was, how compact it was, and it's not like I've never seen it before. I had obviously used it in the past, but just on a tiny Switch screen, having a little like tiny dinosaur like the Raptor, just it kind of felt satisfying to me, which is partly why I'm putting it on this list. And I think it deserves this spot on the list because, you know, the Raptor is a very useful tame, and I'm not going to just put them on if I don't think that they're not useful, because they do definitely have to have some kind of decent use to be able to be used in, obviously, this list, you could say, for the best Switch creatures, and the Raptor's just one of those in my opinion. And I know this is ASA B-roll and it's not Ark Switch B-roll, but I don't really think the game looks very good on the Switch, and you know, I'm not going to ruin this fantastic image quality from ASA here, and that is partly why I am firmly on the PC side of things now. Next up, we have got the Bionics, and this creature had to be on the list, and I've always really liked the Bionics, but when I played Switch, I actually probably used it the most that I ever have, like, just at all. Like, I really used a heck of a lot of the Bionics when I played Ark on my Switch, and obviously that really played to my benefits because, you know, like, caving is really what I kind of did the most back then compared to anything else. I don't know why, as an Ark Switch player, I just went around and did loads of caves, but that's just kind of what I did, and I'm so thankful for this creature. And for about 1 year period, 1.5, 2 years that I played Ark Switch, I got so much use out of this creature. It had to be on the list, but there are obviously some other creatures which I got more use out of in the game, and obviously that's why it is only in at the number 9 spot. Next up, we got the Megatheum, and the only reason why I really like this creature was it was a great chitin gatherer, and that is pretty much all my reasoning behind it. Yes, I did the Broodmother and all of that with the Megatheriums back then, but still, I really liked to gather as much chitin as possible, as for some reason I always didn't have enough chitin. So I would just go out to a cave. Not actually the insect cave. I used to go, I'm trying to think now. I went to the artifact of the massive quite a lot, and I can't remember what the other one is. But I went to the one of the other ones that was in the agenda for the Broodmother ones. Obviously not the Skylord, but that's not really used in the Broodmother artifacts list. It would be like the Hunter or the Clever or something is another one I did. But I did the artifact of the Massive a lot, which kind of doesn't really make sense to me now because I slightly loathe that cave because of all the lava that's in it. It doesn't really suit right with me whatsoever. But you know, hey ho, the Megatheum was still an incredibly useful creature for my Switch days back then for gathering all kinds of chitin, and that is why I've put it in at this spot, and I never once actually used it to gather any berries. Next up, we got the RG, and I absolutely love this creature just right from the start of Ark in general, and when I got to use it on Switch, especially considering I think all the new UI was out. It was, because Ark Switch came out in 2018, so it must have been. But yeah, since all of that came out, like, it was really nice to kind of use this creature with the new model and all the new things that came with it, and it gave another breath of fresh air, is what I should have said. A breath of fresh air to everything, and it really made me appreciate this creature more than I ever really had. And even to this day, actually, shouldn't put it in the past tense, it's the present tense. I don't really appreciate it as much as I did back then, but I still really respect this creature. It's just, I feel like I respected it more back then, and now I don't give it enough credit because of like the Maywing and all of that it's just kind of stepped in. But, you know, the RG had to make the number 7 spot, and I just had to put it on this list because I loved it in the Switch stage, especially considering the Smithy on their saddle as well, and the regen ability, just all really incredibly useful abilities. Next up, we got the UT, and I loved the way like this creature was utilized. I just felt it was really cool, and whenever I was in a boss, I was never on a Megatheum, a Rex, or any of that. I was on the UT, and the UT was the only creature I would ride on any boss fight. I loved this creature to death, man. Like, honestly, I was on this all the time, even not for boss fronts. Like, I basically didn't tame Rexes. Like, obviously, I did, but for bosses, but I didn't tame Rexes to, like, ride around on and just kill stuff in the general map. No, I would tame a UT for that, and I don't really do that nowadays, but back then, this was, like, my go-to carnivore. It's like, oh, I've just spawned in. First thing that we're going to try and do is get the stuff to get a UT, and although, like, I didn't use it the most, there are some other creatures which maybe I definitely prioritized over this, but just thinking about it, like, my XP must have had to be really high on my single player server, because I got these things like within the first couple of hours, like easily. I probably boosted the settings back then. I boosted the settings a lot more than I do now. Now I like a little bit more of a grind and a challenge, although ASA is already a challenge enough to run on my computer that I'm having to pretty much spend all my YouTube earnings on a new graphics card for this game. Thank you, Wildcard, for all of that, but, you know, since we're talking about it, how's ASA running for you? Next up, we got the Giga, and I had to put Tiny Tim here. Like, I loved the Giga, and obviously, this was pre-Carnotaurus, so no, that exists. Actually, is the Carnotaurus even in the Switch version of Arc? It should be. I'm pretty sure it is. It might not be. Who knows at this stage. But either way, the Giga obviously is and was back on the old Switch version, and when I look at the old Switch version, it actually kind of makes me cringe. It's so blurry. I don't know how I played like that with such low frames. Now I like practically need 60 FPS, although I can't get that in ASA, but I will do once I have the 3090. Don't worry, but I'm not going to be running it at 4K or something stupid like that. No, I don't really see the point in 4K. Do you see the point in 4K? Either way, back to talking about the Giga, and not 3840 by 2160, which is the pixel resolution for 4K. The Giga was just that creature which I could always rely on to, like, kill things. Like, I would go UT and Rex, and then also the next 3 creatures on the list, actually. And if you know me well, you can probably guess what I put in at number 1. And although I really like that creature in at number 1, like, really a lot in 2015 and 2016, I'd somehow, like, gained a stronger like for it through all my Switch playthroughs. But either way, Giga really was one of my Switch favourites. Next up, we got the Thea, and I really liked this creature for transport. I didn't really use it so much for combat and all of that because I used the creature in at number 1 for it. For like transporting around the map, this was really my go-to, although never really liked the Redwoods, and it always seemed to run really poorly on the old Switch version, so I was like, oh, it's like, it just didn't feel as smooth in the Redwoods, so I kind of just tried to avoid it. I didn't really know what was affecting it too much. I didn't think about frames per second too much, and then when I look at my frames that I was getting when I was like first playing Ark, not on the Switch obviously, predating that, it was like, oh my god, it was dropping to like the teens and all of that, and it's I could never do that now, but I could back then, and I was running at medium settings at 1080p, and I probably should have turned that resolution down, all the settings down, and maybe just kept ambient occlusion on, screen space obviously, not distance field, and maybe I would have got a better experience. But it doesn't matter, now I am knowledgeable in those things, and I do try and keep a smooth, consistent experience, because also it makes better B-roll for the videos. If you have just like a stuttery, horrible mess that's blurry, it doesn't really work out, and there's no getting around that really, unless you're a photos channel, then you can just run the game at 1 FPS and publish the photos. But with video, you really can't, and don't really want to be using other YouTuber stuff. It's not a great thing to get into. But talking more about the Thea, this was obviously a creature which I greatly respected for its travel abilities more than its attacking ones. Like I said, I did kind of like the bleed ability, although I didn't know what it did. I just thought the effect looked cool, and that's kind of why I liked it, really. That was my rationale behind it. It's really that simple, and I was quite easy to please back then, so, you know, it kind of makes sense. Next up, we have got the Thea, and this was kind of my most used herbivore. I just liked it for gathering all the resources, but I did do some creature gathering, and obviously its saddle was unlocked at level 69.
Nice.
That is a joke which I'll never get over, but at the time, I didn't really take consideration into all of that. But yes, the Thea was just one of those creatures, and I did actually use it for the dragon boss fight, because I did complete the island completely on Gamma, Beta, and Alpha, I think twice through all of my Switch efforts, but I didn't spend an all too huge amount of time on bosses. I just more preferred general exploration, and I really liked gathering loads of artifacts, which kind of played to my benefit, because you'd need them for bosses. The only annoying bit for bosses for me was just all the other resources you needed to get. And also, I've just noticed that I have miscounted this top 10 list, and I can't really think of another creature which I'll put on my can, so I'm just going to talk about it here. But it's essentially, at this point, I've almost finished this video, and it's really late at night, and I need to get some rest. So instead of adding another creature in, I'm just going to talk about one right now, and that is the Allosaurus. As although I don't really like the Allosaurus as much now, back in my Switch days, I really did appreciate that thing, and again, I found its bleed ability cool, even though I didn't know what it did whatsoever, and I felt it was a fast tame, and it was nice in packs. Either way, let's get into number one. Sorry about my miscounting. In at number one, we have the Carnotaurus, and this has pretty much always been my favourite creature, and back in the Switch days, it was, and I loved this creature to death. Like, again, like I was saying when I was talking about the Giga, I like this creature even more than I did back in like 2015, 2016, 2017, predating obviously the Switch version of Arc, which was a 2018 release. Like, obviously, I really loved the Carno back then, and it was still one of, like, my favourite pretty much. But to fully solidify that, I played Arc Switch version, and I liked it even more, especially now that I was fully grounded to the island and I didn't have access to all the other maps. I don't really know why I left the other version for the Switch version, but I'm kind of glad I did, because it gave me a different perspective on the game, I guess, and it didn't really look all too worse than what I was running at the time, so I didn't really take it into much consideration when I look back at it now. Actually, I shouldn't say if I ever look back at it, because I do look back at it, and I'm just, oh god, not something which I really like to look back at in terms of graphics and performance, but they have updated it now, so I guess you get more FPS, but the graphics don't really look the best. I know it runs better, and it definitely looks better than what it did, but it still is pretty much a blurry mess for me. I'm used to playing Arc at 1440p now, so yeah, you can't really take that experience away from me now. I know what Arc looking its best looks like, so you know, now I have that vision of Arc in my mind. But I'm glad that I did play the Switch version, and again, with that Carno's bleed ability, it was something which, again, I didn't know what it did. I was not very knowledgeable. I didn't do a whole lot of research. I was just like, oh, bleed damage, and it's like, oh, it probably does more damage then. I didn't even have damage numbers turned on or any of that. I don't know. I just kind of travel around, but that was my favourite Arc Switch tame. But anyway, that is the end of today's video. Sorry about the slight miscount there, but I guess you still got 10 because I talked about the Allo. What was your favourite Arc Switch tame, if you ever played the Switch version? And if not, what's your favourite Arc creature? And with that, I'll see you all later.